Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to a new episode of the Learning FreeCAD for Beginners, where we teach the fundamentals of FreeCAD from a beginner's perspective whilst we learn workflows. Today we're going to be looking at surfacing workflow and carry on with the techniques that we looked at in our previous video. So the previous video was regarding a sketch attachment and using such attachments as the OXY attachment and how we would do that and basically getting our head around how that attachment works. In this video, we're going to be using those line attachments in a surfacing workflow, and we're going to be attaching to something like a base sketch by clicking on a number of vertices and selecting a sketch and learning how to attach that with those certain attach modes to allow us to control the curvature of something like this object. So I hope you're finding all these tutorials useful, and let's have a look at this technique.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel.
We start a new document in FreeCAD, and I'm going to come over to the sketcher and start sketching the basic geometry for our surface. We're looking down from the top, so the XY plane, so you can see here, and I'm creating a new sketch along the XY plane. What we're going to do is create some geometry in here, and I'm going to use a rounded rectangle. The reason I'm using a rounded rectangle is because we have these curves here that we can add a surface to. So the idea is to take this shape and create a curved shape for this. So the bottom of the shape will be this rounded rectangle, but the top will be curved up. So we're going to make sure this is symmetrical to the center. We don't have to do this. I'm not going to go too much into constraints because we're going to move through this at a decent speed, because we don't want to dwell too much in locking down the full geometry. Let's use a symmetry constraint, and I'm going to take these 2 points and the center point and just make those symmetrical. Now you can see we've got some constraints here. The horizontal constraint, I can click on that and delete that using the delete key, and I'm going to pull the bottom out just to make this shape a bit more interesting. Now if you think of it, well, we're looking this type of shape. It could be a wing mirror, or we could be looking at creating some kind of, say, a window, like a domed window or something like that. So we've got this shape here. Let's close out, and we're going to look at creating a surface across here. Now first thing I'm going to do is select the sketch and actually come into the view, and this is really for purpose of demonstration, so you can see the vertices, and also makes it a lot easier to see the vertices and actually select them. Is I'm going to bring up the point size, and this is under the view tab, and it's under object style. So we've got the point size there. We've also got the line width, so we can increase the line width if we want to as well. Now I'm going to attach a sketch to this. Now if we looked at our previous video where I started talking about the line OXY attachments, you notice that I created a sketch then attached it. This time we're going to select the points that we want to attach to. We're going to go through this attachment style in a moment as well. So we can either look back at that video or we can get a rough idea of the attachment style here, and I'll leave a link in the description. So we're going to select some vertices to attach the sketch to. I'm going to hover over the vertex here, and then I'm going to use the control key, and I've held it down, and hover over this vertex. So we've got the 2 vertices selected there, and now I'm going to create a sketch. So create a new sketch. It's going to ask us about the sketch attachment. If we drop this down, we have got the OZX, OZY, etc. attachments here. Now remembering back to our previous video, because we've selected only 2 references, 2 vertices, then we're only interested in the first 2 of here. If we selected 3, then we use all 3. So O is the origin of the sketch we're attaching. So that'd be the middle point of the sketch where the axes cross. So that will attach the first reference. The second one is the direction in which the sketch will be pointing. So because we haven't got a Z on the sketch, that's always normal. So it runs in and out of the sketch. So I'm going to pick OXY and hit OK. So you can see that we've attached the origin to our first selection, and the X of the sketch that runs along here is attached to our second reference, the second vertex. You can see that we're actually laying flat on this sketch, but that's absolutely fine because we can rotate this sketch in a moment. I'm going to use the external geometry tool, or come up to sketch geometries, and you'll see the external geometry tool in here, down here. And we'll select this vertex and bring it in. I'm next going to add an arc between these 2 points, like so. Now we don't want to pull in these 2 vertices yet and add an arc, because we're going to rotate this one here, and it's going to rotate around this point. If we start adding in a arc on this side, then when we rotate, this arc will come up this way and we won't get the effect that we want. So let's close that and look at that sketch. This is going to be my profile of the surface. So if I right click and rename, this is the surface profile. It won't be the exact profile, it just keeps the surface under control. It's really a constraint against the surface, so it will stop the surface going beyond this curve. At the moment, it's laying flat, so we need to rotate that. So click on the surface, make sure you're on the data tab. And if we come down, we can see we've got the attachment and the angle. And if we rotate this, you can see, well, it's rotating around the wrong axis. So I'm going to set that back to 0. And I'm going to come up to the map mode, which is OXY, and click on the 3 dots on the end. Now I can scroll down to the bottom and use the around X, around Y, around Z. Now these relate to the sketch axis. So if I go around X, this is the X of the sketch that runs this way. At the moment we're on the XY plane, so it will align with our global coordinate system. But if it was on a different plane, then it will be different. The Z axis here runs in and out of the sketch. So if I rotated like 45 degrees this way, if I added some Z direction, not around Z, then the Z of the sketch is actually normal to this sketch. But we must remember that we've rotated it around this way. So the Z is actually this direction. So we can see that when I go in the Z direction, it will move upwards. We don't want any direction. We want it attached to these points. Let's come up and hit OK. We've now attached our sketch. Let's do the other 2 points. So select one, Control select the other, new sketch, and we pick, remember it's just the first 2 because we've got 2 references. So it would be OXZ, connecting to the origin and running along the X of the sketch. Let's OK that. And then add our curve and pull in the geometry and attach it to that. Now we've got our arc, let's close, and again let's rotate this. So let's come around, and if we look at our previous sketch, let's click on it, so surface profile, and come down to the attachment and look at the axis. You can see we've got a 1 in the X, so we're rotating around the X here. If you look at our other sketch, and this is the reason why it wouldn't rotate in the right direction, is that our axis is actually rotating around the Z. And that's what happened here. It actually rotated around that Z axis. So we can either do one of two things. We could zero out the Z and put a 1 in the X and rotate it that way. Or let's zero that out. Go into the sketch using the map mode again. And come down. And we look at the attachment offset. See it's saying in local coordinates here. So this is the local coordinate system of the sketch. And we'll rotate around the X. So once we've got them rotated, then we can close out, hit OK, and we'll rename this to Surface Profile 2. This sketch here, the bottom one, is our base sketch, which we'll create the surface against. Let's zoom in and have a look at what we've got. So we've got our base sketch, and we're going to create a surface on this base sketch. To do that, I'm going to use the surface workbench over in the drop down and come down to surface. And we're going to be using something called a fill-in surface. So this one here. So click on the fill-in surface and add the edges. And we move around all the edges. And we need to do this in sequence. So we can't click here and then click this one because, well, it won't work. We have to do them in sequence. So I'll just remove those two using remove edge and then add edge again and add the edges in. And you can see the surfaces start to fill as you move around. We're not going to touch these arcs yet. We're just going to fill the bottom surface on this option. Now if we come down, we see the edge constraints. So this constrains the surface against these edges, and this is how we make our curvature. So add edge and then click the edges that constrain our surface, like so. The surface was flat because it was a planar object originally. That means all the vertices are on the same plane, therefore a flat surface. When we add the arcs to this surface as constraints, then we start getting the curvature. So at the moment we've added the arcs in here. Let's have a look to see what happens when we start moving these arcs. Now the good thing is that we have got the arcs. In the attachment we've got the angle set up against the right axis. And that was determined by the attachment mode. If we look at this in profile, we can see what we've got. We can see how the surface comes up and it's constrained with the arc. And the same on this side, the surface comes up and it's constrained with the arc. So it keeps these surfaces in check. Let's click on surface 2, and what I'm going to do is come down and change the angle, and at the same time I'm going to go to edit and refresh, which is Control R on Ubuntu. It'll be different on Windows, it'll be different on Mac. So I'm going to use Control R each time I press the up arrow key. So I'm pressing the up arrow key, Control R, and you can see how that arc is constraining that surface. Notice the continuity of the surface. So basically we've got an arc between these 2 points like so. And the constraining edges we've added to that constrains the arc between these two surfaces. So we change the angle right up to say here, you can see that the surface is being constrained, but it's still trying to make an arc between these two. So I'll bring this right over so it's in this angle, hit Control R. You can see how that surface is being unconstrained, so it can just produce the arc that it wants to produce. If I move both of these arcs out of the way, so this one here, and bring this right the way around, so it's over in this direction, hit Control R, you can see what's happening. So we're getting this arc between both these points. So we can make this curvature in, say, like a panel or something like that. The more arcs we add, let's say we added a center arc, then that will constrain the center of this surface. So let's bring the arcs right in. And same on this side. So we've got this surface here. If we take the profiles and pull the profiles out, best idea is to zoom out and find the center of the arc, which is down here somewhere. Let's bring this up. I can start pulling those out like so and hit close. You can see what's happening. Let's do the other one. The arcs are getting more towards a spherical shape, and our surface starts moving outwards to follow those arcs. And again, we have control over that surface. So we created this dome effect here. So if you're looking to surface such things as a swing top bin, then this is the route that you could go. If the surface looks of low quality, remember that this could be down to the deviation settings. Also, we have surface settings as well. So we've got the degrees here, so I can play with this degrees and get some different effects on the surface if we got some problems with it. I normally bring the degree right down. The deviation for the surface, if we look at view, we can see the deviation on here. Under object style, change this to 0.05, and you can see how that surface has cleaned up. Now when it comes to something like creating a second skin for the surface, so this is the first skin, the first wall, and we want to create a solid from this, because at the moment this would be a shell, because we've only got one wall, then we would come over to, say, the part and use something called an offset or part 3D offset, and you can see what's happening there. It's actually 3D offsetting it, so we can increase that offset to where we want. So let's go, say 6. Let's push the offset outwards. But if we look from the front, we can see it's not in line. -6 to go inwards and fill to make the internal, but this is not a planar surface that is placed around there. We get this offset surface that goes this way, and if we OK that with the fill, then we've got basically an uneven surface that runs around here. We could, say, come in and create a shape in here and cut it from here, so we get a nice planar face that we can use. Or if I come into the offset and just delete that, and we look at our base sketch, this one here, and what we're going to do is a little trick. If we look where it is and we use the extrude, and I'm going to extrude it by, say, 2 mil. So we extruded this upwards, but it's a solid extrude. Let's come back to the extrude and look at the data tab and see where it says solid. Set that to false. If I click off, you'll see we've created a very small lip that runs around there. Because we've got the extrude, it's actually extruded downwards, which we don't want. Because if I try to create a boolean against these, so part, boolean, and union, and hit yes, we get some obscure results that's coming in. Let's just delete that fusion and use the extrude, and I can see it's gone downwards because we've got an overlay there. And I'm going to come in and make this -1, so it's going the other way. Now when I take the surface and the extrude and use the union, so I'm going to use the toolbar this time for the union, and click yes, we can see those union together and we've got no errors in there. Now click the fusion and create the offset, the 3D offset. I'm going to use the toolbar this time. And note, when we look at this, you can see that we've got a 3D offset that runs all the way around here. So you can see it in here, and you've got the 3D offset. And let's set this to, say, 5mm. That's gone outwards. You can see we still got this as planar in here. So if I come down to the right, you can see we've got a nice planar surface. So if I go for the fill, it's all filled in there, absolutely fine. This jaggedness is deviation, which we can change or set permanently up in our preferences. So edit preferences, we can set the deviation in there. I've got videos about that if you want to go and find that on my channel. If we go -5, that goes inwards as well. And then hit OK. Remember, if we're doing an offset, that inside we'll have the fusion, and that's actually displayed. So we need to press the space bar on that fusion to get rid of it. Now we've got our surface. I'm going to control select the surface profiles and press the space bar. And I'm just going to neaten this up by coming into the view and set the deviation to 0.05. And we've got this nice surface which we can add Boolean effects to. So we're going to add shapes, say the sphere, and make it whatever size we want. Transform it. And create a cut between these two, or a Boolean. So I'm going to go for a cut. So cut that away from inside there. Now, word of warning, with the 3D offset tool, sometimes it doesn't work. So you have to find an alternative route to create that thickness for the object. There are a number of options, and we're going to be visiting those in a future video. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again soon.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.